I warmly welcome you to today's United Nations International Day of Older Persons, co-organized by the Office of the High Commissioner of Human Rights, the Global Alliance for the Rights of Older People, GAROP, the International Federation on Aging, and the NGO Committee on Aging, Geneva. Whether you are joining us in person in this gray and rainy Geneva, or connecting with us online from across the globe, your presence and commitment are deeply appreciated. Let me begin by saying this is not a standard UN International Day of Older Persons. It takes place at an historic moment. Just months ago, after the Human Rights Council adopted on April 3rd a resolution establishing an intergovernmental group working to draft a United Nations Convention on the Rights of Older Persons. This indeed is a moment to celebrate. Both the adoption of that resolution and the unwavering commitment shown by the group of friends of older persons and the decisive engagement of civil society across the globe, as well as the great job by the United Nations, UNDESA, OHCHR, WHO, ILO, UNAPA, UNITAR, UNESE, etc. These developments, this momentum, and this shared determination will undoubtedly shape the road ahead, not only towards the adoption of our convention, but also in changing the way we address aging issues in our societies. At the same time, we must acknowledge that for many older persons, while we meet, deliberate, work, and aim for resources, their daily life still brings little to celebrate. Too many continue to be invisible, neglected, or excluded. That is why today is not a day for complacency. It is a day to raise our voices. It is a moment of affirmation. Older persons exist. We are part of humanity. Our lives and livelihoods matter equally and at every age. Actions here in Geneva at the Human Rights Council are crucial, but many decisive choices will be made in New York, where resources are allocated, and in Doha, where the social summit will soon take place. These are the arenas where words must become commitments. We call on member states to ensure that older persons are fully included in these agendas. Without dedicated resources and explicit recognition, the promise will remain incomplete. This is the moment to match commitments with action. The truth is simple. Older persons are not asking for charity. They are asking for recognition. Recognition as right holders, as contributors to society, and as equal participants in development and governance. The group of friends of older persons, member states from every region, the United Nations, and civil society organizations across the world have poured time, energy, talent, and resources into this effort. Numbers matter. By 2050, 1 in 6 people worldwide will be 65 or older. But beyond numbers, each human being matters. Each story of dignity, resilience, and neglect should move us to action. One older person hostage is one too many. One older person killed in an armed country is one too many. One older person ignored is one too many. One older person's abused is one too many. One older person without social protection is one too many. The adoption of the resolutions gives us hope and is inspiring and motivating all parties. The convention the working group will draft will not create new rights. It will simply ensure that the rights we all share are fully recognized in older age without exception or delay. Today's United Nations International Day of Older Persons program reflects this broad coalition behind the process. Governments, UN agencies, civil society, academia, and youth. We will hear high-level contributions from New York and Geneva, as well as from the United Kingdom. UN agencies will bring perspectives, NGOs and academia will share their expertise, and even a young activist will remind us that aging is a concern of all generations. Before we begin, allow me to warmly welcome our distinguished panelists. With us here in Geneva, we have Mr. Thomas Lamasnauskas. Thank you very much for being with us. Mrs. Chitralinka Masei, Mr. Tim de Meyer, Mr. Cherno Marina, Mr. Zvezdan Pirtosek, Professor, Mr. Mohamed Shehadat, and Mr. Maciej Kucharczyk. Joining us online will be Ana Chaviera and Professor Michael Stein from Harvard. We're also grateful for the recorded messages from Mr. Gregor Sneldon and Ilse Brands. Your presence and contributions in different forms send a powerful signal. The rights of older persons unite us across institutions, disciplines, and continents. Allow me to thank all our distinguished panelists and partners for their contributions. And now, with great pleasure, I hand the floor to our moderator, Silvia Pereira-Neville, Vice Chair of the NGO Committee on Aging, Geneva. The floor is yours, Silvia.
Thank you so much, Alejandro, and thank you all for being here. We started on time, but there are some speakers. This is a speaker that he's late, the ambassador, the deputy permanent representative from the Gambia, and if he comes, we will give him the floor when he comes. But I also would like to thank all our co-sponsors and again, everybody here. So we will start. Alejandro already said a few words, and I apologize I was moving around. It's because I was trying to check what was happening with our missing speaker. But I have the great honor to invite for giving the online words is the Assistant Secretary General for Human Rights at the UN, Ms. Ilse Brands. She sent us a video from New York.
Excellencies, distinguished delegates, colleagues, by 2050, our global population will reach nearly 10 billion. Of these, 1.6 billion people, about 16%, will be aged 65 and older. Thanks to the remarkable advances of science, technology, and development, people are living longer than ever before. Longevity is one of the great success stories of our time. And yet, despite this progress, the United Nations human rights system continues to reveal a sobering truth. Ageist attitudes persist in our rapidly aging society. With them come widespread violations of the human rights of older persons. These are not isolated incidents. They are systemic, intersecting, and cumulative cutting across gender, disability, poverty, and other forms of marginalization. This unacceptable situation must change. Earlier this year, with the adoption of Resolution 58/13, the Human Rights Council took a bold step by establishing an intergovernmental working group to draft a legally binding instrument on the rights of older persons. This resolution represents a historic opportunity to move beyond the current fragmented approaches and established a robust, comprehensive, and enforceable framework that guarantees dignity, equality, and inclusion of older persons everywhere. Why is this so urgent? Because older persons are too often subjected to structural violence, abuse, and neglect through overt abuse and quiet acceptance of stereotypes that see them as dependent, less capable, or burdensome. These attitudes shape policies, social norms, and institutions. For many older persons, they translate into higher poverty rates, inadequate access to healthcare, caregiving burdens that fall disproportionately on women, and the weight of accumulated inequalities in education, work, and social protection. We must be clear. Age is not a deficit. Older persons are not a problem to be managed. They're individuals with inherent dignity and rights whose contributions enrich families, communities, and society as a whole. To fail to secure those rights is not only unjust, it is short-sighted. We cannot build inclusive, sustainable, and equitable societies while leaving behind one of the fastest-growing segments of our global population. This is why we need a robust, legally binding instrument that enshrines the rights of older persons in international law, that provides states with clear standards and obligations, and that empowers older persons to claim their rights and seek accountability. Such an instrument would not only close the normative gap, but also provide a framework to dismantle systemic ageism, address intersecting discrimination, and ensure older persons have adequate access to essential services, healthcare, social protection, education, and lifelong learning. It would help build societies that genuinely value all their members, regardless of age. Colleagues, we have important tasks ahead of us, moving from aspiration to obligation, from words of support to action. Older persons must be at the center of this journey. Let us commit today to ensure that everywhere older persons not only live longer, but live in equality and with dignity. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Ilse. I think a very strong statement to start the deliberations. And again, welcome to all of those I haven't welcomed before. And I'm very happy to see several ambassadors, permanent representatives in the room. So I thank you, really, very honored. And we are very honored to have with us the Deputy Secretary General of the International Telecommunication Union, ITU, Mr. Thomas Lamanauskas. Thank you, Thomas, for being here.
Thank you very much, Madam Moderator. And indeed, thank you very much for inviting me to be part of a celebration, of course, for me to you here. So, Excellencies, colleagues, friends, indeed, as already expressed, I think, very eloquently by Ilse, aging is an expression of one of humanity's greatest success stories. A century ago, global life expectancy was around 35 years. Today, it has more than doubled, and to over 73 years, and continues rising. In many countries, children born today can expect to live into their 90s, and some researchers suggest that 100-year life may soon be the norm rather than exception. By 2030, 1 in 6 people worldwide will be over 60. By 2050, there will be 1.5 billion people aged 65 and above, and the number of people aged 80 and over will more than triple, reaching over 426 million by mid-century. So when Alejandro said that people not just exist, I think this is very important to realize. It's not just about existing of older people. This is actually growing and very important part of our society. And indeed, I think one thing that we're learning through the lives we go is like with that's part of the actually society that we all aspire to reach. You know, so I think this definitely apply to all of us. But the real question is not how long we live; it's how well we live. Extending lifespan means little if we don't also extend health span, the years of healthy, meaningful, and productive life. Digital technologies are essential to this. If designed inclusively, they can help older people stay connected, manage health, pursue lifelong learning, and continue contributing to society. Technology can transform aging from a challenge into longevity dividend. Yet too often, barriers stand in this way. Complicated interfaces, unaffordable devices, lack of digital literacy, and fear of scams and abuse. This is why inclusion must be built in from the start. At ITU, we are helping make this happen. Our standards work may sound very technical, and there's lots of numbers sometimes you can hear, you know, like when we describe our standards and recommendations, but it's about making technology easier, safer, and healthier to people as they age. For example, we promote clear menus, larger text, and simpler navigation on phones and apps so nobody is excluded by design. We ensure that telehealth platforms can be used easily by people with age-related impairments. We help make wearables and connected health devices like fitness trackers or blood pressure monitors work seamlessly together so older adults can manage their health with confidence. And we even have global guidance of safe listening, helping protect hearing, which is vital for staying socially connected and independent. We have also made digital inclusion of older persons a global priority. In 2022, ITU dedicated World Telecommunication Information Society Day, and actually through that the whole year, that was our theme of the year, to digital technologies for older persons and healthy aging. With input from the World Health Organization, we published Aging in a Digital World, from vulnerable to valuable, offering practical strategies for governments and industry. Our work on digital skills, accessible design, and online safety continues to expand because empowerment is not just about connectivity, but about confidence and trust. Above all, we must involve older people themselves as co-creators, shaping intuitive, affordable, and safe solutions that meet their real needs. This year's International Day of Older Persons also comes in a landmark moment. In April, the Human Rights Council, as was very well explained by Ilse, adopted Resolution 58/13, launching a formal process towards a new International Convention on the Rights of Older Persons. This is a historic step in affirming older persons as full rights holders and in ensuring that dignity, equity, and inclusion extend across the entire course of life. Colleagues, as we mark International Day of Older Persons on 1st of October, let us remember the true measure of progress is not simply in adding years to life, but adding life to these years. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I know that you have to leave. The question is, do you have to leave now? Or you have a little bit. So may I ask if anybody has a question for you? If anybody has a question for the Deputy Secretary General, this is the moment, because I know he has another engagement and he will have to leave us. But I would like to ask you how we look very much forward for the engagement of all UN agencies in the process of the Intergovernmental Working Group. And really, there are a lot of synergies with ITU. So do you have an idea how do we envisage the participation of the ITU in the working group? And how do you see the issues that you talked about being present in a future convention?
So thank you very much, Margarita. And indeed, I think the very important thing is, as we see about empowerment and full participation of the aging population in the work, in the life of the world, in everyday life, I think we cannot imagine that without the digital technologies. So I think digital empowerment is should be a key element of any empowerment framework in this regard, making sure that persons can not only live healthy life, but can live independent life and can live and also have retain the full social network and social connections as well. And I think this is, for us in this way, this recognition of digital technologies is very important. And we really hope that the new instrument will have the recognition to that. Of course, then where the rubber hits the road is the implementation. I think that's where policies and high-level statements need to be translated into actual technologies that enable older persons to be fully included. And that's where I think our dual role of ITU as the UN United Nations agency, but also as a standard development organization, it really becomes crucial in this regard, because I think that's where, through the technical standards, these policy and aspirations can become technologies that we can use every day. I mentioned a number of the standards or the areas that are covered by the standards that we already have, but of course, this is only growing part of this work. So, but in this way, we also encourage, because I think for standards to be meaningful, it's not enough that technical communities participating, which is our usual community, but it's very important that user communities participate. So I think it's also, important part of collaboration in the future will be to make sure that through your efforts, through the efforts of NGOs involved in this area, that we also have a right stakeholders, right, NGOs participating in technical standard development work by setting the requirements for that, so that the technology community can reply to those requirements. We're really integrating the necessary technologies in everyday life. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And of course, we will look for ITU as well to help accelerate the access of older persons also in remote areas or those who do not have access. Thank you. We have one question from the floor. Can you...
Ricardo Espinosa, je suis un ancien fonctionnaire de l'ONU, retraité.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ricardo Espinosa. Microphone, please. Microphone, please. I'm a retired UN officer, and I'm working for the International Association of Human Rights in Geneva. The ITU representative did answer part of my question. Yes, indeed, we are very much worried about the implementation side, and parliamentarians are playing a great role normally, and my concern will be, as we know that in many countries in the world, there are elderly person who are in prison, their rights are not protected. I would like to know if at ITU there are debates concerning the implementation and the role of parliamentarians to protect older persons, especially those who are in jail. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the question. I think on the specific aspects of let's say, imprisonment, I think my colleague from New York would be better placed to respond. From Human Rights Council, of course, ITU in this regard is rather technical organization that focuses on digital connectivity, digital transformation, and ensuring, of course, technology standards in this regard. And we are guided by our colleagues across the UN system in making sure that we contribute rightly to the human rights frameworks, of course, being led by them. And I think we have also representatives of High Commission of Human Rights to be able to, with who we collaborate very closely, of embedding human rights in the standard development, for example. And of course, this is one area to do. So I think, but on the specific issue on the parliamentarians, indeed, that's been a growing area that it's very important for us to include. For example, through the World Summit Information Society process that's now been running, actually, this year we're celebrating 20 years of it. So we've been very strong. This is not only including different stakeholder groups from the governments, the private sector, technical community, civil society, and academia, but we have a growing parliamentarian track. And I think this is a very important aspect there because parliamentarians, as you rightly said, shape the policies. And so we need to understand which policies they're shaping. We're having numbers of parliamentarians who attend our annual business forums, including the last one. Now, because we combine that event together with the AI for Good Global Summit, so they participate in also discussions of emerging technologies, such as artificial intelligence, how that could be included. So we really shape the awareness in this regard. We also very closely collaborate in a number of initiatives with the Interparliamentary Union, and including especially their recent work on artificial intelligence, that again, we've been also being involved, and as well as different parliamentarian groups. For example, I personally briefed the Interparliament Group on Emerging Technologies, Artificial Intelligence, that includes a number of parliaments around the world. So indeed, that is the important constituency to understand, let's say, different implications of the technology, so they could understand implications of the policies. And our duty is to include them in the dialogue early on and provide them information they need to shape those policies that they deliberate. Thank you very much.
Do you have time for one more question? One more question, yes? One short, and please introduce yourself. Thank you.
So for global non-killing, humanity is immensely rich, and a lot of that money is there in the telephones systems. How does ITU plan to garner some of that money to reach the most ones in need? Thank you.
I love that question because it's actually, we are having it gives me opportunity to brag about some of the things we've been doing recently. So especially on digital infrastructure, so there are two tracks, digital infrastructure investment and device affordability, so these are closely related. So in terms of digital infrastructure investment, we have realized exactly what you said. There is enough, generally is enough funding available around the world. That funding is not equally distributed. So we need to create incentives for that funding to reach the areas that mostly need it. And we had seen that examples, for example, during the COVID time, the really digital infrastructure really benefited from a lot of investments, regretfully not everywhere. So with this in mind, now 2 years ago we launched what we call Digital Infrastructure Investment Initiative, together with the 7 development finance institutions, or multinational development banks, including World Bank, African Development Bank, Inter-America's Development Bank, and so on, EBRD. With the idea that we need to bring policy side and enabling side that ITU actually specializes in, and the money side that the DFIs are specializing in, and help governments and private sector to understand each other better. So for the governments to create the rightful conditions for the private sector to channel that funds. That's also was with the understanding that none of the, even the best funded public sector finance institutions will not have enough money to fund the infrastructure needs. Actually, in those infrastructure needs, we assess about 1.6 trillion by 2030 to reach everyone around the world. And if you add additional softer parts, which you call regulatory, skill development, policy aspects, that rises around 2.8 billion. We have a recent study called Connecting Humanity that outlines those numbers. With at the most recent Financing for Development conference in Seville, together with a UNCTAD, we launched what is called Digital Infrastructure Investment Catalyzer, to actually with the 3 pillars: data and monitoring, capacity building and matchmaking, to now build on their assessment and general initiative with the actual tools to help governments to attract investment and to help investors to find the governments and find the projects that are really eager to invest, and to ensure that there's actually good understanding within those communities. Because we again feel, and was actually just yesterday we spoke at the side event of UN General Assembly on exactly that purpose, where there was a strong consensus. There's a lot of money in the markets, but that money needs to be rightly channeled. And finally is, of course, we're working also with the operators very strongly in what is called device affordability, so making sure that those devices that we all use are more affordable. There's an initiative by Mobile Operator Association, GSMA, specifically targeting that and trying to lower the cost of devices, to use strongly partnering in this. Part of that is about working with the vendors and operators, but part of that is again working with the governments to make sure that the digital industry is not just considered as a source of revenues through taxation, import duties, and others, but also source of enablement. So these are some of the areas we work on. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Thomas. And really, I want to stress the importance exactly of access of people who don't have it, and the fact that the technologies can enable people to connect, and not that technology becomes another tool of exclusion simply because we don't have access to them. Thank you so much for being here with us. And I'm sure that we will see each other, and that you will be involved as well in some more raising awareness of the rights of older persons. So I'm sure that we will carry on communicating and exchanging ideas. Thank you. So now I'm going to carry on with, and I have a pleasure to invite, she has a wrong name there, but we can put her name there. I'm inviting to take the floor Miss Chitra, exactly, she's changing her name, Chitralekha Marik-Mase. She is the Chief of the Rights of Older Persons and the Development and Economic and Social Issues Branch at the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights. Chitra, happy to have you here.
Thank you, Sylvia. Good morning, everybody. Good afternoon. Sorry. Seems still like very early morning for me today. It's been a busy day. I'm going to follow through from what Thomas has just said, because we were asked to talk a little bit about how the UN system is actually contributing or providing input and support and doing what it should do on the rights of older persons. So let me begin by saying that I want to begin where Thomas, when he said the word that it was not about living long lives, it was about living good lives, about having a life lived well, a life of joy, of dignity. And very often we tend to leave the words like joy and happiness and dignity out when we are having a serious discussion about human rights. And I want to bring this back to that by saying, we say we have human rights by virtue of being human beings. And if we are human beings, this is an essential and elementary criteria of our lives when we judge, is it a life lived well, right? So I want to begin with that point, to remember we're all human, and it's not just all about black and white and gray, but about everything in between as well. So the UN agencies have all been working on this topic for much, much longer than we realize. For the last 20 years, there has been a dedicated push to bring more attention to the issue of the rights of older persons. Did we have momentum? We had momentum. We moved forwards. We went backwards. We went sideways. It has been like that, but we have seen some significant focus and traction over the last 14, 15 years. Now, I'm going to put those 14, 15 years aside, and I'm going to go back to the UN system as a whole. When the UN was founded initially, we had already in place a treaty body system, We had international treaties that were supposed to protect and promote the rights of all human beings equally everywhere without discrimination. So I think that's something to remember, that this is not something we are beginning with a scratch. Yet, we're not beginning from a scratch, but yet we have found over the years that it has been very easy for all of us, and we're all equally culpable of contributing or making a certain group one time or the other either invisible or feel that they have less meaning. And this is one of those areas. Yesterday, when we had a discussion, we were talking about the fact that human rights are indivisible and interlinked. Now, if we look at all of us in the room around here today, I think it's safe to say that there may be people from their 20s to about their 60s in this room. More? Okay, yes, in the 70s as well. So this is the one thing that we can all look forward to. We may not think about it at the age of 20 or 30. I remember that when I was 30, 50 seemed like a million years away. Now sitting over 55, I feel, oh my God, I'm going to be 60 soon. It goes by very quickly, but we are the lucky ones. If we are lucky, we are going to be there and we're going to be older. So how does human rights and why does the treaty matter so much? It matters so much because we unfortunately have made a very significant demographic group invisible in the way we've looked at them. It seems almost, we've talked a lot about older people, but I think it's also important to remember that older people, the beauty of older people is that you can be in any part of the globe. You can be from any ethnic minority. You can be a very good person. You can be a professional. You can be someone at home. You can be a minority of any sorts. You can even be someone in conflict with the law. But you are all old people everywhere. So every single aspect of human rights applies equally. Coming back to the importance of the human rights framework, I just want to talk a little bit about the fact that we have the treaty bodies. We have the special procedures, and the beauty of the special procedures is this is a system that looks at every aspect of human rights, and it has done so from 1948. Even before, you have things that look at safe drinking water, your right to food, your right to healthcare, your right to housing. These are things that we all take for granted. But these are all things, unfortunately, for a certain demographic, are becoming increasingly difficult because, for example, if you're an older woman who did not have access to higher education or even did not finish school, you have continued to work in the shadows or within the safe confines of your home, but you've been in the informal sector all your life providing care and support. You are widowed because most of the times women tend to live longer than men. But the challenge here is that women live longer than men, but they do not live necessarily healthier than men. They do not necessarily have access to issues like property, pensions, or certain rights. So how does this equate to a good life lived? And there are many different aspects which we could explore and continue going on. So the special procedures, the treaty bodies, the UPR system, all together come together to provide that support. But then some of you may ask, then why this emphasis on a new treaty body? Precisely for the same reason that there have been gaps in implementation, but equally the treaty body system and the special procedures have also not taken into account some of the latest developments. Law does not live in vacuum. It responds to challenges and opportunities that arise. 20 years ago or 25 years ago, I remember as a slightly younger person that there was so much of what we take for granted in digital technology seemed like science fiction to us. Today, it is a living reality for us. Where has law adjusted to that or reacted to that? We haven't. So there is a gap there. And like that, there are many different areas of gaps. The UN system also have the UN economic commissions in different parts of the world, and they are all helping us work together as a united system to ensure that we are collecting better data and we are able to support member states more effectively in collecting data and analyzing it for with the objective of the rights of older persons. There are many of us UN agencies in the room as well. I'm delighted to be sitting next to Thomas because, as some of you know, his team and us, we are working on a specialized project for bridging the digital gap for older people. It's a project that we've been talking to you about. There are many different aspects we could talk about. And I just want to say that each and every part of the UN system is coming around to this. We also have a very active interagency working group, which is more than 35 UN agencies that collaborate and share ideas on how we can do better, how we can share best practices, how we can help in improving policy and legislation. And here, if I may just go back for one more minute to the human rights framework, because it has been taking a serious beating in the last few days. And I think it's important we do put it on the table that the treaty body system, the special procedures, and the UPR have been some of the biggest successes that have been fought in the human rights world in taking forward the improvement of human rights. And the guidance that one receives from these specialized experts or the recommendations made directly to a country or a member state once a special procedure has visited the member state, or the recommendations that states take on under the peer review of the Universal Periodic Review, all ultimately are aimed at improving, strengthening, and where necessary, establishing structures, policies, and law to improve, protect human rights, and to promote the effective enjoyment of human rights of all people. And right now, our emphasis also is that this system must be challenged a little bit more and to do more for older persons. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chitra. Yes, we have a lot of work to do, but I'm also happy to hear that the work of the interagency working group on aging that is more and more active. And on this spirit of the interagency work and the increasing work on older persons, and this is also partly thanks to the resolution adopted in April, that everybody wants to be part of the process. So I'm really very happy to invite to take the floor Mr. Tim de Meyer. He's a senior advisor on labor standards policy at the International Labour Office, the ILO. Tim, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. First of all, let me thank the organizers and the numerous sponsors of this timely event to mark the International Day of Older Persons for inviting the ILO. And we're not only saying that because we're a sister agency of either the Office of the High Commissioner on Human Rights or the United Nations proper, but because our governments, employers and workers whom we represent see great value in strengthening the protection and the rights of older workers, and are very keen to contribute a perspective from the world of work. In fact, and it just shows that as an organization, we know a thing or two about active aging. On the occasion of our centenary, more 100 years, in 2019, we pledged to direct our efforts going forwards towards, and I quote, measures that help older workers to expand their choices, optimizing their opportunities to work in good quality, productive and healthy conditions, until retirement, and enable active aging. A lot of buzzwords there, but I think you get the sense of how central the world of work is to making possible what I think the new convention will seek to achieve. And that imperative, of course, officially declared on that occasion, came out of a reflection around what we call the future of work, which identified technology, and I'm very happy to have our colleagues from the ITU on the panel today, technology, climate change, open economies, and last but not least, demographic shifts as forces that we all have to confront together to maintain human dignity at work and beyond. And so it is that the initiative, the very welcome initiative to enshrine the human rights of older people into a new convention and enshrine it in international human rights law is also inspiring us at the ILO at this point to consider having a general discussion at the highest organ of the ILO, the conference, on the labor market implications of demographic shifts, and we hope to be able to do this by or around 2030. Social development measures are also very likely, and social development measures to enhance the life and work of older persons are also set to feature quite prominently in the political declaration that is likely to come out of the Second World Summit for Social Development in two months from now. I'm speaking here about demographic shifts because the fact, and sometimes there's a little bit of tension in this area, because the fact that some regions have a burgeoning youth population should not blind us to the fact that aging is ultimately, as we see it, a universal trend that will transform societies, economies, and labor markets. Already today, 80% of the world's older persons live in low and middle income countries. Rural areas are aging even in countries where cities are teeming with young people looking for jobs and a better future. And that simple fact already tells us that the need for articulating the human rights of older workers is really global, is really universal. As lifespans increase globally, the success story of our time, as was said, we see a new reality unfolding. Many people will, want, and indeed can work longer, but that work must be decent, as it has to be for every human being. Decent work means that life at work must be safeguarded. It must be protected against age discrimination, protected against the repression of voice at work and even in retirement, exclusion from training, unsafe environments, arbitrary dismissal. These essential pillars of decent work have a place in a new convention as we see it. For those who cannot participate in labor market or can no longer participate in labor markets and who lack the means to age in dignity, robust social protection systems must step in. And that is not a privilege, that is already a human right. The increase in old age pension coverage in recent years is welcome. It's now covering 4 out of 5 older persons in the world, but additional efforts need to be made, and this is where the action comes in an important manner, to close the remaining coverage gaps, especially for women, and ensure that benefit levels are adequate to effectively prevent poverty in old age and ensure a dignified life. We are not navigating uncharted waters in this. In fact, and this was another area where, human rights area where the ILO was really privileged to participate and come in with its perspective from the world of work. We have a powerful precedent on how a human right can and indeed should integrate the reality of people's working lives, and that is the Convention on the Rights of the Persons with Disabilities, which equally looked at issues around employment, decent working conditions, social protection, and protection against discrimination. For older persons, we need this same comprehensive recognition, not only of their right to work, but also of the immense and often invisible value of what they do outside what we call formal employment. The unpaid care for family members, the volunteering, the community work, and these contributions are indeed the glue that holds our societies together, that will grow in importance, and that should be properly recognized. We do not start from zero. The ILO is probably best known for its expansive body of international labor standards, many, if not all, that are relevant to which are relevant to older persons, and whether that concerns their job opportunities, the protection of life and income, opportunities to shape the decisions that affect them at work, and the protection of their fundamental rights. The ILO, even in 1980, adopted a specific instrument, the Older Workers Recommendation, number 162. Unfortunately, there are so many that we have to go with these numbers, and which promotes equality of treatment, access to training, fair employment, security, safe conditions, all of these things that I already mentioned. Only last year, that standard was reviewed on a tripartite basis, governments, employers, workers, and considered up to date. A further update may eventually be needed to address today's realities, because today the world of work is being transformed rapidly. We have longer working lives. There is the digital transition, platform work, gig work, often in precarious conditions, widespread informal employment, growing reliance on unpaid care work. Again, these issues, in our view, should have pride of place in such an international important instrument. Perhaps most troubling is one of the more troubling aspects, perhaps is a better way of putting it. Yes, we see how aging is starting to divide societies, and too often older people are framed as a burden. That was already referred to. But we also need to be reflective of the need for intergenerational solutions and solidarity. It's important to recognize that the interests of one generation should not be sacrificed for another, for the simple reasons that societies function best when generations support each other and when everyone at every stage of life is adequately protected. So with this, I think we've pointed to a number of areas where we think and where it is probably appropriate that the centrality of work in a life of dignity is worth recognizing, and in that sense we stand ready to provide our every support to the instrument that is going to be developed. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tim. I have been very nice with you too. I have not cut the time, but I want to ask these next speakers to keep a bit of time, because I do not want to take away from the possibility of having a discussion. But it's so important all you have said, and we will take your offer, and we will obviously need the ILO, because the right to work, the right to social protection are very important elements that have to be present in a legally binding instrument. And in fact, the independent expert just presented to the Council a report on the right to work and social protection. So now I would like to call my friend Ina Volker. She is the current co-chair of the Global Alliance for the Rights of Older People, GAROP, which is, well, perhaps you will explain what GAROP is. And she's also the head of international policy of BAGSO, the German National Association of Senior Citizens Organizations. Ina.
Thank you, Sylvia. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, dear Alejandro, dear Sylvia, it's an honor to address you today on the International Day of Older Persons as a representative of GAROP. And thank you, first of all, for the organizers for convening this important gathering here today. Well, we have already heard valuable insights from the UN bodies underscoring the urgency and the collective commitment to advancing the rights of older persons. And as a representative of civil society, I would like to just take a few minutes to reflect on the opportunities this represents, what a resolution presents to us, and outline our collective expectations for the Intergovernmental Working Group. And then if time permits, I can also tell you a little bit more about GAROP and how we, in close partnership with the NGO Committee on Aging here in Geneva, work to serve as civil society platform in this process. The adoption of the resolution marked a historic milestone, as we have already heard, the formal initiation of a process towards the development of an international legally binding instrument. And this process, it represents a unique opportunity for us as civil society to engage meaningfully, ensuring that the resulting instrument is robust, inclusive, and reflective of the lived realities of older persons worldwide. As a network comprising over 400 NGOs all across the globe, GAROP brings together diverse expertise from grassroots advocates to national organizations, as well as human rights experts, all united in our commitment to advancing the rights of older persons. The success of this process hinges on the active engagement of all stakeholders, particularly older persons themselves, to ensure that the future instrument is both representative and enforceable. In this spirit, GAROP has developed a set of recommendations for the work of the Intergovernmental Working Group, which are also used by civil society organizations in their national advocacy efforts. First, we recommend ensuring that the participation from civil society is as open as possible, including through the direct participation of NGOs that previously were accredited to the open-ended working group in New York, as well as those with consultative status with ECOSOC. And of course, other NGOs should also be afforded the opportunity to participate. Second, we advocate for the Intergovernmental Working Group to prioritize the active and meaningful participation of older persons and their representative organizations from all regions as equal partners, including through the dedicated speaking opportunities. To guarantee an inclusive process, we recommend a hybrid format. This approach will enable the participation of older persons with disabilities, those with mobility restrictions, challenges, with caregiving responsibilities, or those experiencing poverty. Beyond fostering inclusivity, a hybrid format also promotes sustainability by reducing emissions associated with international travel. Third, we expect that the self-organizing structure of civil society will also be represented, and GAROP and the NGO Committee on Aging, or actually both NGO committees on aging, both in New York and in Geneva, we have successfully co-facilitated the collective engagement of NGOs at the Open-Ended Working Group in New York and the Human Rights Council over the years. As a convening platform that was born in 2011 out of the need to strengthen the voice of older persons globally, we're committed to ensuring an inclusive and transparent process with regional representation and the prioritization of older persons' voices at its core. And we are ready to help facilitate this process. Finally, regarding the work plan of the Intergovernmental Working Group, we recommend the elaboration of a legally binding instrument commences with a thorough consideration of its conceptual foundation, the basic principles, and scope. The work of the open-ended working group should serve as a basis for this process, addressing the fundamental conceptual deficiencies in the existing human rights framework concerning the rights of older persons. And I think I will already close because I want to make sure that there's time for discussion as well. So I just want to say that I hope that the adoption of the resolution, or it has for us opened a formal path toward a legally binding instrument, and we are ready as GAROP to help to mobilize our global membership, many of whom are present here today, many also watching, I think, online, and engage actively with other NGOs wishing to contribute to coordinate our collective efforts in the coming months and years. And together with older persons worldwide, we are committed to shaping the content of this instrument, ensuring that we can all age with rights. Thank you.
Thank you, Ina. And indeed, thank you for our colleagues, our friends from civil society who are here. And GAROP is really, as I said, is an alliance of over 400 members around the world, and many are grassroots NGOs who are we are all advocating for the instrument. And we see ourselves not only as advocates, but also as a resource to the member states who will be negotiating. So here we are. And we have now a video message from the Secretary General of the International Federation on Aging, Mr. Gregor Snedon. Can you play it, please? Yeah. Thank you.
Dear colleagues, friends, and champions of the rights of older persons, I speak to you today with a sense of deep purpose and, well, a touch of regret. I would have loved to have been with you in person in Geneva for this important commemoration of the International Day of Older Persons 2025. But as you can see behind me, I'm still in Cape Town, South Africa. This is Table Mountain, where we've just concluded the 17th Global Conference of the International Federation on Aging. The energy, conviction, and unity that filled every session of our conference resonates strongly with the historic moment we are living today, and with the very purpose of this event hosted in Geneva. The International Day of Older Persons 2025 takes place at a crucial juncture. Just a few months ago in April, the Human Rights Council adopted a landmark resolution that sets in motion the drafting of a United Nations Convention on the Rights of Older Persons. Now, this is not just some other diplomatic milestone. It's the beginning of a new era in the global recognition and protection of the rights of older people. And let me be clear, this historical moment has been seized. In Cape Town, over the past few days, we witnessed how human rights and the idea of the convention was at the heart of every discussion, whether we spoke about healthcare, the digital divide, social protection, age-friendly cities and communities, emergency preparation, the decade of healthy aging, climate justice, intergenerational solidarity, brain health, you name it. Across plenaries, symposiums, and informal gatherings, the message was the same. The convention will not only recognize older persons as right holders, but also it will catalyze progress across multiple sectors: development, humanitarian response, gender equality, economic security and inclusion, the silver economy. It will close the protection gaps that have persisted for far too long. It will bring coherence and enforceability where we have relied on fragmented voluntary frameworks. It will strengthen international solidarity, and most importantly, it will give older persons a voice and a place at the table. And I want to emphasize something else we heard clearly in Cape Town. The process would never have been reached at this stage without the vision, determination, and persistence of civil society, of all of us. Civil society has been the moral compass and the engine of this movement. And the International Federation on Aging, through our members, partners, and allies, is proud to have been part of the effort from the very beginning. At the IFA conference, NGOs from every continent came together to affirm their readiness to engage, support, and sustain the next phase of this journey. They understand, as we all do, that this convention will not draft itself. Governments and UN bodies must now step forward with ambition, but they can count absolutely on the spirit, knowledge, and contributions of civil society. And they can count on the IFA. The IFA stands ready with our global membership, our expertise, and with our advocacy networks to support this process every step of the way. We will not stop until the rights of older persons are no longer debated, but respected, protected, and fulfilled in law and in practice everywhere. Dear friends, the path ahead will require courage, clarity, and collaboration. But if the mood in Cape Town is any indication, and if today's event in Geneva is any confirmation, we've entered this new chapter with our eyes open, our feet grounded, and our hearts aligned. Let's walk this path together, arm in arm. Let's make history, not just for today's older persons, but for every generation. Thank you.
Thank you, Gregor. And here we carry on making history. And aren't you tired of thinking of all the topics that we need to take into account? But we will get there. So again, we are here in uniting the different sectors. And older persons and civil society, we are here at the center. And we broke a bit out of protocol in that the member states are speaking last in this event. The deputy permanent representative of the Gambia was supposed to actually be among the first, but he was held up in a event in the WTO. So he hopes to get here by the end. But we have the ambassador of Argentina who will speak later. And if the DPR doesn't get here, we have somebody from the Gambia in the room that may step in and read his statements. But now we spoke the UN and we had the civil society, and we also work very closely with the national human rights institutions. And we have Anna Kawiera, also an expert from the Office of the Commissioner for Human Rights of Poland, and she's the vice chair of the GANRI, the Global Alliance of National Human Rights Institutions. They have a working group on aging and human rights of older persons. And she will talk to us live online from Poland. Anna, are you there? You are unmuted, and can you put the view on her? Oops.
Can you hear me now, please?
Now we can hear you, but we need to change the view. We cannot change the view? Okay.
That's the operator.
The technician, can you put the spotlight on Anna? Okay, start talking, Anna, please.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Madam Moderator, Excellencies, dear colleagues. Let me thank the organizers for creating this space for all of us, for reiterating our united commitment to promote the human rights of older persons. We celebrate the International Day of Older Persons, which is marked on the 1st of October. This year, as we already have talked, it was already told, this year the atmosphere of celebration is truly well rooted as it grows on the Resolution 58/13 adopted on the 3rd of April earlier this year. The fact that this resolution has been supported by over 80 UN member states and has been afterwards adopted by Human Rights Council by consensus gives good basis for further deliberations on collaboration of different stakeholders on drafting a legally binding instrument on the human rights of older persons. Human Rights Council invited equally states, relevant United Nations organizations, agencies, funds and programs, national human rights institutions, civil society, especially older persons and their representative organizations, to contribute actively to this process as it was stated in point 6 of this resolution. NHRIs are among them also because of their earlier engagement in this process. Global Alliance of National Human Rights Institutions, GANRI, which represents 118 national human rights institutions from all regions, has been actively taking part in informal negotiations in March earlier this year, which led to adoption to this historic resolution. Moreover, our dedicated working group on the rights of older persons has been engaged in this process both in New York and in Geneva. NHRIs have a kind of unique role, especially NHRIs of A status, which confirms their full compliance with so-called UN Paris principles. Based on those principles, NHRIs enjoy broad functions by providing advice, reporting and monitoring, handling complaints and human rights education, among other responsibilities. NHRIs are funded from the public budget, but they remain independent from governments, which is set out in legislation or the constitution. Thanks to those and other principles, NHRIs build bridges between citizens, civil society and governments by providing governments with their analysis of complaints or desk research on human rights. NHRIs build also bridges between international law and the legal framework at national level by promoting knowledge and understanding of the former in the national context. And without a dedicated international instrument, legal protections for older persons remain fragmented and inconsistent. As a result, discrimination, exclusion, and violations persist. A dedicated convention would provide clear international standards specific to older persons, strengthen national protection frameworks, and equip NHRIs with the necessary tools to advance the rights of older persons. Legal standards in this regard should serve as a point of reference and clear guidance for all stakeholders, NHRIs and governments included, on understanding the direction of further changes both in legal and policy frameworks. For now, on the way towards the Convention on the Human Rights of Older Persons, NHRIs use their institutionally recognized mandate and internationally approved expertise as the accredited expert bodies on human rights. NHRIs are also thankful for the reports of the UN independent experts on the enjoyment of all human rights by older persons, for a significant source of reference in their everyday work on promoting human rights of older persons. I would like to focus briefly on one of the findings of the independent expert, Dr. Claudia Mahler, namely, as we can read in her report on ageism and age discrimination published in 2021, and I quote, "Ageism is to a large extent unconscious, socially accepted, and pervasive in different aspects of society." End of quote. This challenge requires long-term work on uncovering those mechanisms, pointing out and naming examples of discriminatory behaviors, social norms, or legal provisions. And this naming is a part of this endeavor. NHRIs are already engaged in this process in a good collaboration with civil society and organizations of older people. This expertise and experience of NHRIs may also be of use in the process of drafting a new legally binding instrument. The deeper understanding of ageism and how it affects enjoyment of the human rights in older age, the more adequate principles and provisions will be enclosed in the new instrument. NHRIs stand ready to contribute to this process in a most efficient way. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna. And from NHRIs, we go to academia, and we have with us also online from the US, Professor Michael Stein, who I hope that we can see him. Can you see if we can? Perhaps Michael Stein, are you there? Please open your microphone, and I hope that then we will be able to see you on the screen. Michael is the executive director of the Harvard Law School Project on Disability, and he has been involved also on the process towards the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, and he is very active and a promoter as well on the rights of older persons. Michael, are you there?
I am. Thank you so much.
No,
Thank you for allowing my participation and for your solidarity and for everything that everyone in the room and online does. As we contemplate drafting a treaty for older persons, I would like respectfully to speak on some lessons learned from participating in the formulation of the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, the CRPD, both positive and not so positive. Having supported the CRPD's implementation now for nearly 20 years in some 44 countries, plus UN agencies, international financial institutions, national rights institutions, and so on, and also developing the theories for legal reform, transposition, and expansion. I've written over 200 pieces of scholarship on the CRPD, including the main treatise. First and above all else, the lesson that we learned in the negotiations was the necessity for the active participation and involvement of civil society so that its priorities are expressed and honored. Nothing about us without us was the theme of the CRPD negotiations, and it makes sense. Everyone knows their own priorities and needs better than others, and those groups must be allowed to educate the individuals who are working on formulating an instrument. The necessity of specifically enumerating human rights, first as expressed for persons with disabilities and now for older persons, must also be paramount in our minds. Rather than relying on the existing human rights canon, which has significant gaps in it, we can't continue in the same old business and the same old model. The importance of recognizing, yet not conflating, older persons and persons with disabilities. There is a significant population empirical overlap in these groups, and yet the issues are not always the same. There are similar issues such as access to healthcare, accessibility to information and communication technology, quality of life of individuals, their legal capacity and supported decision-making, yet they are not identical. Let me provide you with two a bit more granular examples. So for example, in accessibility to information and communication technology, these can overlap significantly in regards to making websites accessible to blind and print disabled. See, for example, the Marrakesh ideas, the deaf and hard of hearing, all of which are expressed in the CRPD. Yet the issue of cognitive load is not expressed well in the CRPD nor in its glosses. The notion that there is a limited amount of information that can be consumed because of cognitive differences, and that there are different considerations for access due to the nature of the cognitive difference based on its origin. So one size or category will not fit all sizes and categories. More significantly, within the area of supported decision-making, this was a CRPD innovation in response to substituted decision-making arising under guardianship, which is a worldwide phenomenon. Here, too, the two groups share much in common: stigmatic presumptions of incapacity, removal of autonomy, possibilities of exploitation and abuse, and yet there are differences as well. But the CRPD text, and through the general comment, has yet to refine very basic structures and requirements. Do supported decision-making agreements need to be authorized or filed judicially? How are they to be contested or challenged or changed? Why is a bad supported decision maker better than a good guardian? Is there space between these two regimes where we can support older persons in an appropriate manner to their choices and to their benefits? Can we think creatively and granularly, for example, about dementias? Dementias have both shared features, such as loss of ability to perform activities of daily living, and divergent features such as the speed of decline and whether decline occurs across all or some abilities and all or some times. Within supported decision-making regimes, can we anticipate both individuals with dementia whose capacity fluctuates over time, either predictably because they're in a cycle, or unpredictably because they're influenced by various exogenous stimuli, such as losing family members, losing support, having to move from the home. Those whose capacity varies by cognitive domain, for example, present well for immediate determinations, but may experience difficulty conceptualizing long-term implications for decisions. Can we think about those whose capacity enables them to set goals for care, but not the capacities to select among therapies to meet care-oriented goals? And always, how do we protect these individuals from exploitation and abuse while ensuring that we empower them to live vibrant, full, and human rights fulfilling lives? I could go on, but I'm going to try to honor the time limit and keep us on time. Thank you so much for allowing my participation.
Thank you so much, Michael. And Michael and Anna, stay online because there might be questions for you. The issues that Michael raised are crucial. The issues of decision supporting mechanisms that to replace the older systems of guardianship, and many governments have been moving into supported decision making basing on the CRPD, but not all are applying the model to older persons. So this is also one of the discussions that we will have to have, how to balance as well between the autonomy and protecting the integrity of the body of the person, or protecting persons from exploitation. Thank you so much, Michael. Very important issues. And now we will move to Dr. Zvezdan Pirtošek, and my apologies if I am not pronouncing your name properly. He is from the Faculty of Medicine at the University of Ljubljana in Slovenia, and we are very happy to have you with us.
Well, thank you very much, and the pronunciation was just perfect. Madam Moderator, Excellencies, and the distinguished delegates. As a neurologist and neuroscientist, I have spent my professional life studying the brain, the seat of our identity, memory, and dignity. And as a humanitarian, I've seen the suffering that arises when dignity is denied. Today, I speak in support of a convention on the rights of older persons because I have learned two lessons. The first lesson is one of hope. The brain, even in the late life, retains remarkable capacities. Neurons form new synapses, networks adapt, memory can still find new meanings, and creativity and empathy can flourish until the very last breath. Age does not erase dignity, nor does it extinguish the light of humanity. The second lesson is one of silence and suffering. Too often, medicine and society do not recognize this. Too often, I have witnessed older patients denied rehabilitation or operation because it's no longer worth it. I have seen them excluded from intensive care not because of medical need, but because of the number on their birth certificate. I have seen them locked away in institutions where neglect and loneliness destroy more than any other neurological disease. As a doctor, I can treat disease, but I cannot treat injustice without law. That is why United Nations Convention on the Rights of Older Persons is essential, not as another declaration, not as voluntary guidelines, but as a binding treaty, clear in its language, firm in its obligation. Because rights for millions of older persons today remain only words on paper. The evidence is overwhelming. During the COVID-19 pandemic, discriminatory triage policies excluded older persons from life-saving care. In humanitarian crisis, older people are the first to be left behind in evacuation and the last to be included in recovery. In digital societies, they are excluded by design from online health, banking, and civic participation. Older women, in particular, carrying the accumulated weight of a lifetime of discrimination, are most likely to face poverty, violence, and invisibility. This is not misfortune, this is systemic ageism, one of the last socially tolerated forms of discrimination, so subtle and so subconscious in my own profession. And ageism has a cost. It costs lives. It costs society the wisdom and contribution of millions. The absence of enforceable rights means that abuse in care home goes unpunished, that older refugees lack protection, that long-term care remains fragmented and underfunded, and that digital exclusion isolates millions. Colleagues, we know from history that law changes culture. The Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disability transformed the way we see disability from a medical problem to a human right issue. And the Convention can do the same for aging. As a young doctor, I saw older persons as passive recipients of help and charity. Today, almost half a century later, I cannot see them but as full right holders, equal in dignity, equal in justice. And let me also remember what I see every day. Older persons are not only vulnerable. They are leaders, they are caregivers, they are transmitters of knowledge. They are grandmothers raising grandchildren, farmers sustaining families, scientists, artists, teachers, community leaders. In climate disaster, they hold ecological wisdom. In university and local hospitals, they pass on knowledge and experience. A convention is not charity, it is recognition of their agency. From the perspective of neuroscience, to strip people of dignity in old age is to wound the very organ that makes us human. When an older person is silenced, we silence memory. When they are excluded, we exclude identity itself. When they are neglected, we neglect the wisdom of humanity. Excellencies, the cost of delay in suffering is written in suffering every single day. Every day without this convention is a day when an older woman falls into poverty without recourse. A day when a creative, resilient brain capable of joy and learning is reduced to silence by neglect. But the price of courage is also clear. By adopting this convention, we can build a society where dignity does not end with youth, and where the future we hand to our children is one in which they too can grow old safely, with dignity and with pride. Let me be clear. Aging, if we are lucky, is the most universal of human experiences. In denying the rights of the old, we deny our own future. In protecting them, we protect ourselves. As a neurologist, I know that dignity and autonomy are as essential to the human brain as oxygen. As a humanitarian, I know that justice delayed is justice denied. As a citizen of this world, I know that we cannot afford to wait. My plea, let me conclude with my plea to you. As a physician who deals with elderly all his life, my plea to you, let us send a clear, unequivocal message from Geneva to the world. Human rights know no age. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Pirtošek. Did I pronounce it correctly?
It is excellent, thank you.
Thank you. And we always say that older persons are not inherently vulnerable. They are made vulnerable because of the exclusion that we suffer. So really, I would like also my plea is to take older persons from the list of vulnerable people into the list of those that require justice, as you say. And many of the issues that you mentioned also relate to the issues that Michael brought up, and especially related to dementia and the decision-making and our right to choose our care. And we move to the last section of topics. We moved from the NHRIs to the academia, and now we are always called on, they say, but you only talking about older persons. What about the young? What about the young? Of course, when we talk about the Convention on the Rights of Older Persons, we are also thinking about the young of today so that they have justice in the future. But we also engage very much, and also today, on some intergenerational dialogue. And for that, we have one person talking of the Secretary General, Maciek Kucharczyk, another difficult name, Secretary General from Age Platform Europe, who obviously he works with older persons. And then we have a young person who will talk after him. So Maciek. No, actually we will give the floor first to Mohammed Shahadat. He is a refugee youth activist and a Kofi Annan change maker. Mohammed, we would like to hear from you first. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much. Thank you for giving me the space today to share my perspective as in the context of asylum and displacement regarding this event. My name is Mohammed Shahadat. I'm from the Syrian Arab Republic, and I lived the refugee journey for more than a decade, from Jordan to the Netherlands, and now in Switzerland. I have learned that displacement is not just about borders, documents, or shelters. It's about people, memories, and dignity. We often focus, and rightly so, on youth, women, and children, their education, skills, and the future. But there's another group whose presence, wisdom, and dignity deserve equal attention as well. When I founded the Youth for Peace Initiative in Amman in Jordan in 2019, I used to meet and work with older persons, grandparents who fled war and lost everything they had built. I always noticed that the light in their eyes when I spoke with them. When someone truly listened to them, we all always feel that real and true feelings. They shared stories of Syria before the conflict and the war, stories of loss and hope, of love and resilience. Their memories kept alive what had been broken, and their wisdom offered guidance when despair was near. This is deeply personal to me. My grandmother experienced the same thing that I faced in my life when she's older person. She experienced displacement in Jordan, Egypt, and Turkey. Her health declined, her mobility was limited, not only because of her health, but also because of her status. And she often said she felt like a guest in everyone's home except her own. Few months ago, she returned to Syria. When she stepped back into her house, even though the country was still fragile, her face lit up. I witnessed her strength and dignity return. That moment taught me something profound. Home is not just a place. It's a source of power, especially for older persons. 2 years ago, when I sought asylum in the Netherlands, I met Margaret, my Dutch language teacher. She used to come every morning with a warm smile with her team, teaching me far more than a language. She showed that integration is a two-way street, and that hope exists even in the hardest circumstances. Later in Switzerland, I found myself a refugee in the German-speaking part, and I met again another wonderful teacher. Her name is Gisela. She was my German teacher. She welcomed me and other young refugees into her home, shared meals with us, and listened carefully to our dreams and fear. From these experiences, I learned that between the young and the old, there is a bridge of stories, empathy, and healing. But let us be honest, the absence of a clear legal framework for persons, especially refugees, older persons, especially refugees, creates serious challenges. It makes them invisible, deprives them of fundamental rights, and silences their voices. Without legal protection, their stories and wisdom are at risk of being lost. Yet, until such laws exist, we as young people must carry this responsibility to listen, support, and ensure that their presence is never erased and the bridges are still connected. These connections do more than ease loneliness. They foster cultural exchange and strengthen social cohesion. When older persons share memories of life before the war, they remind us of our shared humanity. When a refugee student teaches a new word, song, or recipe, older persons reconnect with hope for the future. Both sides are enriched and both sides heal. This is why I firmly believe that refugees integration must include older people as partners, not just beneficiaries. Through storytelling circles, intergenerational dialogue, and shared community projects, we can rebuild the torn fabric of social trust and create more inclusive communities. As we look towards a new Syria after the war, we must remember this. Rebuilding requires the energy of youth and the memories of elders. It will succeed only when generations speak to one another again, when children grow up knowing their grandparents' stories, and when grandparents see in those children the compassion and the strength needed to rebuild and lead. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Muhammad. Yes, if you want to clap, you can clap. And thank you so much. And this is what we also always call the need to integrate, to include older persons also in conflict and in areas of, in reconstruction efforts, where, as you said, they have the historical memory, and generally they find themselves excluded from any dialogue and reconstruction. Thank you so much. And Maciek, so what is the reality in Europe?
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, dear Sylvia, if I may, Excellencies, distinguished guests, but also friends, colleagues from civil society. First of all, thank you very much for the invitation to this event, which marks the International Day of Older People. And it was already said by many of my predecessors that this year it takes the International Day place in a different context. I think we can celebrate. It's just the beginning in the process of preparing the convention, but it's true. I do believe as well that it's a sort of a game changer, and we are actually embarking on something extremely important. As Age Platform Europe, this organization from the European Union, which I represent, we gather roughly over 100 organizations from the EU, either self-advocates, but also those organizations which provide services for older persons. Of course, we reflect a lot in our work on how the convention can actually help enhance very concretely the protection, the promotion of equality and human rights in old age. And in this context, I think that the question of intergenerational solidarity definitely comes also at a very key and precise moment. We do believe that actually intergenerational solidarity, which is basically about mutual support, but also about shared responsibilities, and this, of course, goes both within and between generations. This is the kind of intergenerational solidarity that we believe should be not only a social imperative, but this is a principle which can help, I'm convinced, to better understand and define human rights in old age. So today, as we are moving towards the UN Convention, it is extremely important to establish, I think, norms that can foster solidarity and resilience, which will be based on what, it was already said by my predecessor, based on what unites us, rather on what divides us. Intergenerational solidarity is extremely relevant in this discussion because, first of all, it challenges age-based discrimination and promotes, I would say, a more inclusive society where the rights and contributions of older people are recognized and respected. By the way, already WHO says very clearly in one of its reports that intergenerational solidarity, is one of the proven strategies to fight efficiently ageism. Why? Because actually it presupposes that older people are not viewed as a burden, but as equal rights holders with dignity, autonomy, and continuing role in society. So it's true, different generations, we do have different experiences, sensibilities, expectations, and this is, I think, a natural thing. It is not a question then of choosing between the interests, needs, or aspirations of one or another generation. It's rather to build on these diverse experiences in a harmonious way, rather than opposing them, as I said, as mutually exclusive. And once again, the UN Convention can operationalize this principle by providing a more, I would say, nuanced understanding of universal rights across life course. But at the same time, intergenerational solidarity is not exactly the same thing as a fairness between generations. These are complementary, very important two concepts, but they should not be interchangeable. Although this sometimes happens actually in the approach policymakers speak about connections between generations. For us as Age Platform Europe, solidarity is about embracing everyone. So it's about caring, it's about sharing, it emphasizes the connection, mutual support between different groups, communities. It's something that the society can foster, but we as individuals, we can practice. And it was said by my predecessor. We are doing this, so these acts of solidarity every single day as parents, grandparents, daughters, sons, but also spouses, neighbors, friends, employees, carers. We do also this in between different population groups, towards those who may be actually in need. So I think this is the beauty of intergenerational solidarity. While fairness is something, as I said, additional, but it's not the same. It consists of a fair treatment that takes account of different circumstances and needs. So that, of course, provides, I fully agree, a useful, I would say, macro perspective about, for example, distribution of resources, benefits, costs. But at the same time, I think fairness may, I'm insisting, may reinforce the assumption that individuals or groups, that we as people are motivated by self-interest, whether material, emotional, economic, and so on. So this, I think, can be dangerous. It can be counterproductive, because then this can direct policies towards meeting the needs or interests of one single community, population, or age group to the determinant of the well-being and cohesion of a wider society. So here I wanted just to emphasize that these two concepts, they are complementary, but they have very concrete meanings behind. And of course, solidarity, and this is certainly what age always insists on, is based on the fact that we focus on the inequalities that exist within generations. So rich, poor, dependent, strong, actually doesn't depend on our age. This is why we must tackle, our politicians, persistent inequalities within each age and population groups. This is why our governments, when reforming pensions, employment policies, health, they need to look how to avoid that actually at different stages of our lives, we will be accumulating these inequalities, these gaps in the protection of our rights, which would have at the end a negative impact on us when we will be actually getting older and becoming old. Moving to the conclusion, once again, I think that the UN Convention offers an opportunity to frame intergenerational solidarity within the context of universal human rights, rather than as a matter of a pure resource or costs allocation. So in doing this, we can actually foster solidarity through different meaningful opportunities for all age groups. And at the same time, I think the Convention will provide safeguards against the arbitrary use of so-called fairness arguments that may justify on the basis of age and can actually hamper this principle of equality. My last word, I wanted just thinking to conclude my speech, to give a twist, I was thinking, is there any interesting maybe quote or proverb that can actually reflect this question of solidarity? I just came across, I don't know if in the room, if there are any delegates from Ireland, but apparently there is a very useful proverb which says, we live in each other's shelter. So I think that perfectly captures actually the core idea of solidarity, where each generation relies but also supports the others to ensure a society in which we can flourish. So the UN Convention that we're embarking on, I think, is a project that will unite and benefit every generation. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And I do hope that everybody understands that the red alert here, as there are these discussions in Europe going on about fairness that really put generations against each other. And we are striving to really finding the bridges that Mohammed mentioned and the solidarity that you talk about. Thank you so much. And before I will give the closing, and I know that the DPR of Gambia is coming upstairs or downstairs, he's on his way. But I would like to know if there is any questions from the floor, any comments, any of the ambassadors present in the room, if they would like to make a comment. And yes, first I would like to ask if the member states have any question, or somebody from IDOP, if they want to have a question or comment. Yes, yes, Anna.
I'm representing here the Italian Union of Retired Person, CGIL. I think it's great. I think that this is, my experience before was with the International Labour Organization. And so we know how important, and Tim was saying how important the convention can be in order to move ahead than a practical action. But I think that, so we will go into the different points together, and I'm excited about this new avenue. But I think that it's very important what it was said in the end of this reflection about the intergenerational dimension. And for example, and especially talking, we were discussing before social security and the benefits, very often, people that have the social security are seen, like my generation, the privilege, that have something that is not given to the new generation. And this happens because in reality, and it was said before, those who get the benefits from the real benefits are out of the picture. So, it's like it becomes a battle between two that we shouldn't have this problem, but should be together, and so this is why my union now in Italy, I was coming yesterday from 2 days where this work together among generation was very present, because I think this is something that we have to put also, talking again, it's a document that will be about older persons, but the intelligent move is about to say this is for everybody. And this is also a way to defend the UN, and in this moment, I think, is very necessary.
Thank you very much. Of course, we are in favor, as I said before as well. I'm thinking about my children and my grandchildren. They will enjoy the convention more than I will. But I still hope that in my lifetime, and we are putting older persons at the center because of generations of exclusion. And we need to resolve that as well. But I'm very happy to call the Ambassador of Slovenia, Anita Pipan.
Just want to use this opportunity, first of all, to thank the organizers of this event. And for those who don't know, this really was put together by the civil society. And bringing all the different stakeholders today was very, very valuable, and I think very needed. So thank you. This is a great event. As Slovenia is together with Argentina, Brazil, Gambia, and the Philippines, members of the core group of the human rights of older persons, we have put together this resolution that was hopefully a big game changer. And since we are also a bigger group of countries that are members of the group of friends of older persons, I just want to use this opportunity to remind that there were 87 countries that have co-sponsored the resolution, and that this process is not a given. And I want to appeal to all of you to liaise with your New York missions, because the finances for what we will be doing here in Geneva next February and July and later on will be debated and allocated in part in New York on the 24th of December in the 5th committee. So please liaise with your missions in New York so that they do their part to make sure that we have resources in place to have this international legally binding instrument happen soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And as I have seen Mr. Marena coming in the room, would you like to join us in the panel, Mr. Marena, or would you like to talk from there? Thank you so much, and thank you so much for the running to come to us, because the Gambia is one of the members of the core group, as Ms. Pipan has said, that the core group is Argentina, Brazil, Slovenia, the Gambia, and the Philippines. And so we are very happy that you're here.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Sorry for being late as well.
Are you ready to speak, or you want a couple of minutes?
Please give me a few minutes. Yeah.
Ambassador Foradori, would you like? So then I would like to ask the Ambassador Carlos Foradori, the Ambassador of the Permanent Representative of Argentina, one of the the core group and co-chair, together with Slovenia, of the group of friends of the rights of older persons. So they're really very active and our friends. Mr. Ferradori.
Thank you, Silvia, and distinguished colleagues and delegates, distinguished ambassador of Slovenia, ambassador for Brazil, ambassador for the Gambia, and all the distinguished colleagues and friends. I will begin with the gratitude. Gratitude to, first of all, the organizers who have made this gathering possible today. Gratitude for the invitation extended to Argentina to sit among such a distinguished panel. Gratitude to every one of you here today, country representatives, organizations, experts, older persons themselves. And gratitude to all whose courage, energy, and enthusiasm have carried us this far. I also would like to express my gratitude to the members of the core group, the group of friends, and obviously all those countries who sponsor the resolution. And also want to gratitude to, from Argentina's side, I'd like to express my appreciation for the team that is working at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the General Direction of Human Rights. And also, let me mention with deep appreciation the dedication of Dr. Ursula Basset, former Director General of Human Rights Office at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Argentina, whose vision and persistence, energy, perseverance, and commitment have been made indispensable and essential in this journey. This year's theme speaks volumes: older persons driving local and global actions, our aspirations, our well-being, our rights. And it comes at just the right time, because next March we will begin the work of the intergovernmental group created by Resolution 5813. And if we are serious, if we truly aspire to create a convention that improves lives, ensures justice, ends discrimination, then that convention must be more than a legal text. It must breathe with the reality of our people. It must respect the diversity of our nations. And it must be shaped meaningfully by the voices, the wisdom, the life experience of older persons themselves, and by the organizations that represent them. Argentina is committed completely to this important task, to defending the dignity of older persons, to making sure that principle is not an afterthought, but the cornerstone of the international human rights system. For 14 years, in the open-ended working group on aging in New York, we have worked to identify the gaps in law, in practice, in protections. The evidence is there, the research is there, the need is there. Now the action must be there too. And let us be clear, aging is not only about health. It is not only about social protection. It is larger, it is deeper, it is a transformation of humanity itself. Once it appeared first in the developed nations, where important initiatives like the Madrid Plan of Action were born, but today it is everywhere, in small countries and large ones, in low income, middle income, and high income alike, everywhere. And because it is universal, the response must be universal. A human rights convention, nothing else will do. Argentina has been there from the beginning. From the earliest days of the United Nations, we defended the human rights of older persons. But we are entrusted to lead the open-ended working group in New York that brought us to this moment. And we will continue to work with every state, every organization, every voice to ensure that the convention becomes reality, not one day, not eventually, but soon. Because justice delayed is dignity denied. So yes, we thank all the countries, all the organizations, the NGOs Committee on Aging, whose persistence led just months ago to the overwhelming adoption of the resolution 5813. And that resolution created the Intergovernmental Working Group that now carries a solemn duty to negotiate a legally binding instrument for the promotion and protection of the rights of the older persons. But let us not forget, it is not only about resolutions, not only about negotiations, it is about people, human beings, mothers and fathers, teachers and neighbors, men and women whose one stood where we now stand, who built what we now enjoy. And yet, too often, we forget them. We live in a world moving at dizzying speed, a world where the economy dictates our choices, a world where we rush forward, obsessed with the present moment. And in that rush, we forget. We forget that once older persons were honored. They were the keepers of memory, the teachers of wisdom, the steady hands that held families and communities together. Now, too often, they are left behind. Too often, we remember their worth only when it is too late. We cannot allow that. We must now act, because to forget them, it is to forget ourselves. To deny their dignity is to diminish our own. That is why this convention matters. Not as an act of charity, but as an act of justice. Not as a gift, but as a guarantee. Not to grant dignity, for dignity is already theirs, but to recognize it in law and in life. And so, in closing, Argentina recommits itself to a transparent process, to an open process, to a process guided by the UN Charter, by international cooperation, by respect for the rights and freedoms of all persons, without discrimination of any kind. And we say this clearly. The convention will be strongest if it is shaped by many voices, by states, yes, but also by national human rights institutions, by civil society, by independent experts, and above all, by older persons themselves. Because this is their fight, their hope, and their right. Many people, when asked late in life, confess one great regret, that they did not spend more time with their parents and with their grandparents. They remember only when it is too late. It is only then when many people realize that older persons are not disposable, but indispensable for our life. Today, I ask you all not to wait. Think of the older persons, act for the older persons. They are the parents and the grandparents of humanity. Let us do something now for all of them before we too are left with regret, because by then it will be too late. And thank you.
Muchas gracias, embajador. And yes, we take the stage, even when we are not given the stage. Here we are, as I always say, we are here, there, everywhere. So you will listen to us. And this moment, I want to mention that we also have had over 80 people online in this event. And we also fight for the right to be able to have hybrid modalities in order to enable hundreds, if not thousands, of older persons that want to participate in the UN process and they are excluded because they cannot come to expensive Geneva. But thank you so much, and we will carry on. We will carry on together on that. And now I will give the floor to Mr. Marena, Ambassador Extraordinary Plenipotentiary from the Gambia. And after that, I'll pass directly the baton to Alejandro, who will close the event. Thank you so much, Mr. Marena, for being here.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. I mean, sorry for joining you this late. I mean, because of the multiple, events that we have to coordinate from our mission, but better late than never. I mean, the Gambia is indeed honored, to join you this afternoon on this very important subject of, the commemoration of the International Day of Older Persons. We thank the organizers, as well as our fellow core group members, Argentina, Slovenia, Brazil, and Philippines, for their leadership and continued engagement on this important topic over the past year or so. We also recognize the vital role that civil society organizations and representatives of older persons play in advancing the rights and well-being of older persons, including through advocacy, service delivery, and by giving a voice to older persons themselves. This year's commemoration, which is very appropriately themed as older persons driving local and global action, our aspirations, our well-being, and our rights, reminds us that older persons are not just right holders, but also active contributors to the social, cultural, and economic life of our societies, therefore ensuring their dignity and equality in our societies is a shared responsibility. In the Gambia, like many African states, older persons are revered as custodians of wisdom, culture, and tradition. They play an essential role in family and community life, in resolving disputes and transmitting values to younger generations. Our cultural heritage recognizes older persons as sources of guidance, moral authority, and stability. Therefore, protecting their rights is not just a legal obligation, but a moral and cultural duty deeply rooted in our societies. This is why the Gambia has been a proud and consistent supporter of initiatives within the Human Rights Council to advance this agenda. We co-led both the resolution establishing the independent expert on the enjoyment of the rights of older persons, as well as the most recent resolution 58/13 calling for the elaboration of a legally binding instrument on the rights of older persons. At the regional level, we welcome the entry into force of the protocol to the African Charter on Human and People's Rights on the rights of older persons, which the Gambia has also proudly signed, and its domestication and implementation remain high on the national agenda. Domestically, the Gambia has also taken progressive steps towards the promotion and protection of the rights of older persons in various areas of social and economic life. Through strengthening social protection measures and community-based support systems for older persons, incorporating promotion and protective measures into national social policy frameworks and long-term development planning, as well as promoting the active role of older persons in community life as leaders and custodians of cultures and values. Madam Chairperson, population aging is a global reality. While Africa may have a lower proportion of older persons compared to other regions, in absolute terms, our continent is home to some of the largest number of older persons. Therefore, they are and must be entitled to enjoyment of their rights on an equal basis with all other persons. And so the Gambia reaffirms its strong commitment to continue working at the national, regional, and international levels to ensure that older persons everywhere live with dignity, equality, and inclusion. And in conclusion, we recommit ourselves to fully participate in the historic elaboration of the Convention on the Rights of Older Persons, as well as recommit to an inclusive process with older persons at the center of the negotiations and not as bystanders or receivers of our benevolence. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. And I will start on what was mentioned by Ambassador Fioradori from Argentina. Gratitude. Gratitude for all of you to staying of such a long session, but I think it's extremely rich. And it happens once a year only. So I think it's really worthwhile. This is, for us, is not a side event. It's the event. And it's like putting the family together and express our feelings and our talents and everything. So I'll be brief, but I would like to mention that it really makes a difference from one IDOP to the other. When we met last year in a room ago, the sense of enthusiasm and of having done the homework was not there. There was much more uncertainty. What will happen in the spring of 2025? Nobody was sure. We were all hoping that it will happen, but nobody was really sure. But now the ambience is completely different. I really feel that we are on the top of the wave and that we are all really willing to engage into it. The resolution was adopted and it changed actually the two most important things that to change and more difficult to change. It's the will and the attitude and the mindset. And I think that we have changed the will, the attitude, and the mindset to put older persons' issues in all of our agendas. And in each one of the dimensions, so we have food for thought. We have mostly food for action. So now we have to move. And I think we don't really have to be fooled. It's not a done deal. There's still lots of work to do. And we have to work together. And as Ambassador Fioradori mentioned, our strength is working together. It's not leaving any partner behind. We're all partners, governments, UN, civil society, we're all in the same thing. And I will end, just to be extremely brief, as what Ambassador Pipan from Slovenia mentioned. Liaise with your missions in New York. We have to work together between Geneva, New York, and Vienna, and the whole world, but liaise with their missions in New York. And if you allow me, I would like to invite you to attend the IDOP in New York. It's not the repetition, it's complementary, and it really sets the agenda that is going to happen in New York and that will have an impact in Geneva. So my apologies for the NGO committee in Vienna, because they are having their IDOP as we speak, just exactly at this moment. But the recordings of the three of them will be put in our corresponding websites. So thank you very much, our gratitude, and let's keep the work together up. Thank you very much.